Thank you for turning up this early. I'm really excited for all the people who are here and all the people in the stream. 2 days ago, I installed the Congress app on my mum's TV. Hi, Mum. We're talking about pedestrian crossings, open data and closed administrations and what happened to us, and want to give you some things that you can do in your communities, how you can get data when government administration does not cooperate. We're only 2 people up here on stage, but we have more people who are helping us. We are the Center for Urban Justice. We're from Luxembourg. I'm Federico. I'm really blown away by standing here. I couldn't imagine this just a few weeks ago. I'm a developer for a company that does stuff with money. You can follow me on Twitter for as long as that lasts, as Gent Fede. My name is Torben. I'm in product development for software as a service. I do stuff for events. You find me on Mastodon as torben@norden.social, but that's enough. Let's get to the point. We want to talk about problems in traffic and and want to start by looking at how do you know that you've got a problem. Both of us grew up in the countryside and then moved to the city. When you live in a city, you are very often almost run over by cars, and it upsets you. These are typical situations. You want to cross at this pedestrian crossing. There's a car approaching at 50 kilometers an hour, and it stops in the very last second, and you get mad at the drivers. Why did they have to drive so fast? And that's not wrong. I don't want to protect drivers here, but if you look at the red car here, there's no way that a driver can know if anyone's waiting to cross the crossing, especially if children are involved, because children tend to be a bit shorter. And the thing is, the law knows that these are bad situations and that visibility is very poor here. The law actually defines this. I've brought you a part of the Luxembourg Highway Code. It says it is forbidden to park vehicles or animals on crosswalks, pedestrian crossings, crossings for pedestrians and cyclists, fords for pedestrians and for cyclists, and at a distance, and this is important, of less than 5 meters on either side of such crossings or fords. If you read about parking animals at fords and it sounds like Middle Earth, then you're right, it's Luxembourg. That's how things work here. But to visualize the problem, you can see how large the angle that where you can't see anyone is if cars are parked this close to the pedestrian crossing. The same is true in Germany. The German Highway Code says it prohibits parking in narrow or blind spots in sharp bends or acceleration or deceleration lanes in the area of pedestrian crossings and up to 5 meters in front of them, and taxi ranks up to 10 meters in front of traffic lights, and so on. But we realized that there might be a bigger problem. This brings us to a tool called Reported. Some of you might know Fix My Street. Reported is the same thing in a poor version of the same thing by the city of Luxembourg, where the citizens can send messages to the city if stuff doesn't work, like overfilled bins or inoperative streetlights. But there's not really any tracking of how stuff works here. Stuff disappears after 30 days. So So we wrote a little scraper that downloads this stuff automatically and stores it in our database, and we saw that as far as these crossings are concerned, the city got messages by citizens over a period of many years, and the government either doesn't reply or simply marks these as closed, and then you're done. As we all know, simple problems need complex solutions, because otherwise we wouldn't be here. So we looked at, we wanted to know if these are just singular cases or if there's, if it's more systematic. And the first question that we had was, how many pedestrian crossings are there in the city of Luxembourg? I don't know if any of you have visited Luxembourg before. There are some hands in the audience, even some Luxembourgers. That's where overpass enters the scene, which is a query language that lets you query data from OpenStreetMap. And it allowed us to figure out that there was 1,787 pedestrian crossings in Luxembourg. That's number one. There was another element that brings us to the solution, that's Geoportal, which is a GIS portal by the government of Luxembourg, or the Luxembourg state. It has aerial photography for Luxembourg, and these are very high resolution and taken up to twice a year. In winter and summer, it's really great. So we had the placement of all pedestrian crossings and area photography, and thought we'd combine this in a UI that we all know, but few of us use successfully. Hi Tinder. We wrote a Tinder app for pedestrian crossings, and when the user starts it, they get a random pedestrian crossing. There's a blue circle indicating a radius of 5 meters that allows them to measure if there are any parking spots within that radius, and with the green and red button they can vote on these crosswalks. They can also use Google Street View to get street photography, and you can switch between various years of area photography. That's so much for the app. Because this is a tech conference, some of you might be interested in the stack that we used, so here's some information on that. The app was written on Flutter, which works for Android, iOS, and web. We used a Firebase real-time database and cloud functions, so serverless, and some really terribly hacky Python scripts for the management of it. And to display stuff, we wrote a vanilla HTML JavaScript page where Leaflet.js was the most complex part. The app was distributed in a guerrilla way. We used Apple test flight and the beta channels on Android to send installation links to a couple of people we'd recruited. And we eventually had around about 25 users, mostly friends from the Luxembourgish Twitter bubble that used to exist. The whole thing ran over 3 to 4 weeks, and we ended up with at least 25,000 data points. We needed at least 5 votes per pedestrian crossing to ensure some degree of quality. And these 25,000 data points, when 5 people said that that crossing was non-compliant, we trusted them and marked it as non-compliant. And to summarize, 1,787 pedestrian crossings existed at the time in Luxembourg, and 1,150 of them are legally compliant. 4 digits at least, but it also turns out that 475 of them are clearly non-compliant, and 162 of them were uncertain. And we showed you the map of Luxembourg earlier. If you visualize this on a map, the city of Luxembourg, suddenly it looks like this. You see all of these red and yellow dots. We documented our method cleanly on our website. You can still read it. We published this as a GeoJSON file for download so that people could use it in their own GIS systems. Interestingly, the city of Luxembourg also has an open data portal where we also uploaded it. And we were really proud of this. And then the administration came and said this. Nothing.
And that's, of course, frustrating. Of course, we had still lots of fun doing this, but you spend all this time documenting and all this data cleanly, and then you're just being ignored. That was not good. Well, in the end, it turns out we're not alone with this problem, because after we've been ignored, after a few days, the press start publishing their first articles in a newspaper similar to the Taz in Germany, and more articles came in until finally the largest Luxembourg daily newspaper put us on their front page with a large feature, which was gigantic for us. We were very excited and happy. So in the end, it led to 35 plus articles being published about our work, even in Germany. We were very excited, and you could even argue we're international by now. In the end, the government of Luxembourg could no longer ignore us and had to get in contact with us. And of course, also the opposition was very excited with this data, and were using it for their things. And even the Senator of Luxembourg had to, in the end, engage with the topic. And if you never had Luxembourgish before, you can now listen to this here live. There'll be subtitles in case you don't understand it. Okay, we analyzed everything, and there is a group of people that took aerial photography of the city, and including the intersections, and marked all of those which are not conforming to the law, according to their interpretation of the existing law. And for all these crossing, there collected votes, and if the majority of the people said that it's not proper, then they could vote on it. The effectiveness was very impressive. Of the 475 crossings, there are 32 where we say they have to be analyzed further. If you just look at his gestic without his voice, you can tell he's not very happy. Here's another clip. 2008 is actually, there was a new law passed in the March of 2018, and it was put in in action in April 2008. And it was the first time that talked about the 5 meters. And the government came together with the responsible ministers to check how that would practically be put into action. And if you have a crosswalk on a bidirectional street, then you have 4 positions that will now have to follow this 5-meter space rule. And we decided that only the direction of travel is important for this 5-meter rules, because it's not problematic for a car that already passed the crossing to really having to adhere to this rule. So I just want to mention that realistic is probably only 2 points where this law matters, not 4.
Punkten resümiert, und das machen wir jetzt auch in einem bekannten Format der Fotolove-Story. Das heißt,
they've been trying to bring some counterpoints. So here we're going to explain what they did in a Bravo Fotolove story. They said our methodology is wrong.
Es gibt Ausnahmen zum Gesetz.
We checked 32, and they're probably true. And lastly, it's in accordance with the law. So we said, what the fuck? So I really felt gaslighted. We published the data, we published our methodology, but we were not actually met on the basis of facts. They were just saying we're wrong. And there's also all these other factors that are made up. And we were really confused, so we thought we had to escalate it, because clearly they're not taking us serious. So first, we asked the City of Luxembourg again, excuse me, I think this is pretty weird what you're saying. Can you please let us know what we should do different? Could you please publish the data you're basing this on? And they just said, well, 32 of them are an issue, but they didn't tell us anymore. This was essentially on the basis of trust me, bro. And it wasn't really the answer on the question we were asking, so we very quickly realized that it doesn't really help us arguing with them, and that we have to escalate it. So in Luxembourg, just as in Germany, just as in the US, with the freedom of information requests or similar, there are these requests you can issue towards public administration to receive certain information. So we just went ahead and said, hands up, give us your data. You have to comply within 1 month. And as you can see, the City of Luxembourg then sent us just in time, 1 day before the deadline. Okay, but we need a bit longer because it's very complicated. So of course we didn't really understand that. As far as we know, they already had the data. They could have sent it the PDF, but legally speaking, it was their right to extend the deadline even further. So we waited a few more weeks, and then they finally got back to us, and the answer turned out to just be no. So at this point, we realized it's going to be really uncomfortable with them. So we thought to go to next post, an ombudsperson called CAD, Commission for Access to Documents, translated, and it's full of legal experts that check requests and see how what the legal obligation is to follow such a request. So we asked them, are they legally allowed to not give us the data? And once again, we got the answer no. And at this point, we said, okay, it's enough. We're going back to the City of Luxembourg. Dear City of Luxembourg, the responsible legal ombudsperson also, you will have to give us the data. The City of Luxembourg didn't reply at first, and they said, we don't care. And then, of course, here all sense was lost. We didn't understand where to go from here because we were already following the opinion of legal experts. So in our mind, a court would also follow such the same kind of rules. So for now, we were very confused why they would just ignore such an expertise, because in a court it would also they would be forced to have to comply with such a request. So for us, the next step then was to go to a judge. So we're currently at this point. So first of all, we tried to find a lawyer for traffic right. The problem is most lawyers in Luxembourg are specialized in tax or criminal law. So we went with a criminal lawyer, which turned out to be very expensive. So we went to Twitter to send out notice to request financial aid to get the initial lawyer's cost covered. We received 800 euros, and with that we were able to cover the cost, and now we handed in hundreds of pages of legal requests. So the document is on our webpage. You can find it there. It's in French, but of course you can get it translated. So of course the City of Luxembourg also had to answer.
Okay, so it's automated, the robots are here. This entire procedure is relatively more on a written base, so the decision of the City of Luxembourg was not taken. There were 2 rounds per party involved, where one writes, the other one answers, and the City of Luxembourg obviously answered. And you can resume this or abbreviate this in 4 points. On the one hand, they say it's not admissible because they said, like, okay, you wrote your name wrong because you have not been registered from the beginning and you typed it differently over time. So if we mention the name in German or in English, those were different names. The documents are confidential, although all of these things are actually public, and they even mention this in public meetings, and also even mention all those things to journalists, at least in part. They further had the opinion that these documents could be misinterpreted because things out of context could be misunderstood and give reason for concern for the population. And finally, they mentioned that they have problems of personal identifiable data and the copyright protection. So apparently there was a quote that pedestrian crossings are also people. They refer to cartography databases, which are not really relevant for the line of questioning that we had. There's another thing that we want to highlight from this. So actually the City of Luxembourg apparently asked for 3,000 euros in damages, because that's how you treat citizens who are interested in the improvement of public policy and infrastructure. Kind of feels good to be sued for the first time. So what are our learnings and what is our outlook? Starting with the outlook. September 24, we have the date in court, which has been moved several times. Actually, it was initially in April of this year, but it takes a long time because, as you could see, in 2021 we started 2022, and then we had a long waiting time, and now finally we have the date in court. But what are the benefits of all of this? If we win the suit, then we have a win for transparency and definitely more clarity on agreements. If we lose, we don't really get access to the risk analysis of the City of Luxembourg, but that doesn't change anything regarding the core of our project, which is the reality that a lot of parking spots are actually built too close or designated too close to a pedestrian crossing. What we already did reach is that a lot of pedestrian crossings in secret have already been cleaned up by the City of Luxembourg, so they are non-conforming now. New markings on the streets, all of a sudden, which obviously has nothing to do with what we have been talking about and the public debate. And what we can further do is to extend that project to other municipalities or countries. And so we will definitely want to incentivize you to do that, and feel free to contact us. So the data is publicly available with open street maps and Google Maps. Other recommendations are to work more in public, to stay resilient. It's really a marathon. So please communicate well, act in a reflected way. We had impulses to really share on social media and really strike back, fire back if an answer was not to our liking, but it was really helpful to calm down, reflect a bit, and stay on the facts. Definitely don't do this alone, but get yourself some support. Sometimes it feels alone, but you always can get some supporters, be it in coding, reporting, crowdfunding. And we noticed for us that even if we are in a weaker position, if you historically accept that, then you need a long resiliency. Obviously, it is okay, it is acceptable, but don't be demotivated by that. And finally, you will not really be successful without any lawyers or litigators in this. There may be some points where this is the only option left, so there you need lawyers in this case. Until some of this materializes, like a date in court, which is 2 years into the future, it helps to keep people up to date with other projects, because you can't repeat the same numbers over and over again for 2 years. So we also covered several side projects. In the meanwhile, same as in several other places in the world, there are similar situations to those in Luxembourg, gathered publicly available data, but process and visualize those to really show the actual usage of those parking lots. We have a sister project, which is called Safe Crossing, where you can also see how on a legal basis pedestrian crossings are missing or the markings are wrong, similarly but different to what our core project was. And we had several tidbits in some afternoons where the mayoress didn't tire of repeating that roughly 87% of the streets in Luxembourg are limited to 30 kilometers per hour. But we demonstrated with actual data that the actual data might be more closer to 35%. And if at all, then maybe 87%, but closer to 50% realistically. One more thing at the very end. Federico just mentioned it helps to really stay stoically on these processes, to get legal advice, to invest money in this. And it's very clear that all of this is not acceptable. But it is a reality that we have with all kinds of administration. The German Erstellen von Geodaten project actually do that on a full-time basis. And it's really important to mention that we shouldn't be stoic, but it's the only way to really get this creeping in transparency, which is increasing, to limit that. And in this way, attack is the best option or the best defense. And with this is why we wanted to show this project. Thank you very much for your attention.
Und darf ich noch kurz einmal Respekt für die ganzen Dolmetscher und auch unsere GebärdendolmetscherInnen.
May I still add a lot of respect for our translators, including the sign language translator. Thank you.
Und alle anderen Engel, aber habt ihr
And all other angels. But did you see that while those translate, that even translated the subtitles of the videos that they were shown?
Danke.
So, ja, danke nochmal, Torben. Und
Thank you very much, Torben, Federico,
Übersetzerin da. Und
the translators.
alles, was hinter der Bühne ist. Ich wollte jetzt fragen, ob es auch Fragen gibt. Wir haben
Now there's a question, whether there are questions with all microphones in the room.
auch Fragen vom Internet hat. Falls es
We also have a signal angel and
ich sehe, dass auch Mikrofon 2 eine Frage schon für euch
we
hat.
have question of microphone number 2.
Und
Jetzt, ja. Hi, selber aus der Verkehrsverwaltung.
Hi, I'm also working in traffic administration. 2 questions.
Erstens habt
First,
ich verstehe den Rechtsstreit und das alles. Habt
I understand the legal struggle.
Personen aus der Verwaltung, vielleicht über andere
Are there maybe individuals in the traffic administration which actually like what you're doing? And question number 2, do you intend on educating the administration, because that is what I think it really needs?
Ich fange mal mit Frage 1 an. Also,
Starting with question number 1.
haben wir. Die,
Yes, we did.
Meistens tatsächlich nicht unbedingt öffentlich. aber
Not
wir
necessarily
haben auch eine
publicly,
E-Mail-Box und,
but we have a public email
die melden sich auch bei uns regelmäßig. Wir haben auch,
inbox, and
offizielle Anfragen
people
gestellt.
contact us on a regular
Wie das
basis.
eigentlich mit dieser Zebrastreifen-Thematik ist. Also was ist da das Problem? Der Parkplatz?
So we also publicly asked what is the problem, the crossing or the parking lot,
Naja,
and we got a very good
der
response.
Zebrastreifen ist nicht illegal und auch der Parkplatz ist nicht illegal.
The parking lot is not illegal, the crossing is not illegal. You are just not allowed to park in that parking lot.
Daneben haben wir auf jeden Fall,
Besides
wir
that,
gehen da natürlich gerade bei öffentlichen Ämtern diskret um, aber wir haben
we're trying to be
schon aus der
discreet with
Verwaltung
public
sehr
offices,
viel Zuspruch
but we also got a lot
bekommen.
of confirmation and support unofficially from public administration.
Damals diese Aussage mit dem man darf nicht drauf parken, das war auf jeden Fall.
That statement with you're not allowed to park in that parking lot was even publicly printed in one of the articles. And the second question was whether we could imagine entering the administration at that point. Good question. I think personally I wouldn't be the right person for that, speaking for myself, because we are a loose affiliation and are interested in that and already spending our energy on the most appropriate method for ourselves, where we can have an impact, and we have, with good intention, are publishing this data publicly. So this is a statement I would make. Besides that, besides being non-partisan, there are parties in Luxembourg which are close to the subject, but which are not in power right now, and recently have not been re-elected. So we are in the right place where we are at the moment. But we would agree, part of the solution has to be inside the administration. Microphone number 4. I read between the lines that you started in 2021. You stated that the data is stored for 30 days on the platform. How did you get the data from 2013? We described this as Fix My Street. You only badly implemented. Several of this data has been not protected. So on the map you can see the data without any IDs, but if you request the data directly, you can get the data, but it's barely ever interesting. And there are a lot of aggregated data. We requested all this data via the API, we scraped them. The city of Luxembourg noted. It turned out to be a cat and mice game because API started disappearing. Tokens were required suddenly. My private IP was actually banned and I had to access it via my own server. Now we've practiced in the middle, but yes. All right, we have time for one more question. The city of Luxembourg is in strong liberal hands. Do you think there might be a different response if you would request the data in Esch or another city in Luxembourg? Good question. Probably not.
Da gibt es aus der Tageszeitung Vox übrigens, die man sehr empfehlen kann, so eine Studie.
From the daily newspaper Vox, there's a study that in the Luxembourg Parliament, 80% of the requests had been unanimously passed. In other cities in Luxembourg, cities might have slightly different flavor, but not a lot changes. And I think I start mumbling. Not a lot will change unless citizens put the finger to the wound and start twisting it around. I fully agree. The country is small. There are only a few major cities. They all know each other, and their reactions, therefore, will probably not really be that different. We don't have any much more time left, so thank you very much for the speakers.